listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Thursday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. And at the same time, come on over and watch the video simulcast over on my YouTube channel. Best part about going to my YouTube channel, the live chat room going on right now. Go join the other Intrepids. You can talk about this show. You can add your 2 cents worth. You don't have to agree with me to add your 2 cents worth, but you can talk. You can talk to everybody else. You can talk about other things as well. But come on over and watch the show. Join the chat room at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And if you go down and look at the Intrepid radio program link or the section on my YouTube main page, you're going to find over 300 shows since we started airing on Odyssey Radio in August of last year, 2019. And so come on over. You can look at all the different topics we've talked about. Sometimes we go historical. Sometimes we go archaeological. Sometimes spiritual. Very rarely religious. But we do talk about religion and the way it affects our spirituality. We've talked about the history of this country. We've talked about nationalism. We've talked about loving your country and what's wrong with that. We've talked about a little bit about politics. I don't like to get into politicking, even though I make it very clear where I stand on politics. My political ideology is no secret, but you can come over and hopefully find some shows that are going to talk about things from as objective a perspective as I can give it. Now, I am not a journalist. I am an opinion writer. So you're going to see a lot of what I have to say is going to come out in that. But at the same time, I try to give a fair shake to everyone, unless they're just stupid. Then I don't. I eschew stupidity. And as Rocky and I have said for a long time over on the Situation Room, back when John Ward was with us doing that show a few years ago, we had as the tagline, never smarter than common sense. So we try to be common sense. I try to be common sensed about everything I present to you. And we've been, for the last week, we've been on this topic. And if you haven't checked it out, you can go over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And when you go over there, I want you to see something. Just in the last week, we've been covering this whole topic of, where did we start? We started with finding what really matters to us. And then we moved on to the unmaking of America. We moved on to the bridging the gap, the unity that we can gain out of the polarization. Echo chambers and filter bubbles we talked about. We talked about gaslighting, how it affects us on a personal level, how it affects our politics. Critical thinking and Hitchens' razor. And then inoculate yourself from the misinformation virus we talked about yesterday. And that misinformation virus, I think it can be looked at from different ends of the political spectrum, but it can also be looked at right down the middle and saying, how do you find and detect and reject false information that's being presented out there? And that's just the last 9 to 10 days on this show. So go over, scroll through all the back episodes, and you're going to see some great stuff, and I think some fun stuff to listen to in your spare time when you're sitting at your desk and you want to listen to something good. Tune us in and check out the archives. Also, check out ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's my website. And you're going to find all the stuff that I do over there. I am an illustrator, designer, and all of those things. If you have need of that, I've been doing that, by the way, for 40 years. I started in 1977 as a high school kid working for a local print company as they hired me to do book cover art for them, dust jackets. And so I started doing that, and I was in that my entire life now. So if you need somebody to design a book, to illustrate a book, to design book covers, to do corporate identity pieces, logos, all of that kind of stuff, I'm your guy. Come and see me. And that's over at my website, ScottAlanRoberts.com. And Scott with 2 T's, Alan is ALAN, Roberts.com. All right, and that's all I got for our introductory matter to this show tonight. And we're already 5.5 minutes in. Think of that. I thought I would start today and this was just off the top of my head. I saw this book. It was sitting on my shelf, and I've had this book for years. And it's 365, the Dalai Lama, Daily Advice from the Heart. And this is a book I picked up many years ago. I think it was brand new when I got it. And so this was published when? I can tell you how long I've had this book. This was published in, drum roll please, I don't see a date. There's no date on it. In all the copyright and all rights reserved matter and all of that and all the publishing company, they don't have a date on it. Okay, well, I've had it for probably at least 10 years, I think, on my shelf. And time to time, I like to look at this stuff. And he's got the book, it's divided into sections, but every page is numbered. We're on day of the year of 2020. We're on day 282. And by the way, if you think 2020 is bad, keep in mind it's also a day longer than other years. It's a leap year. So there's 366 days this year. And that 366 days, we're on number 282. It's October 8th. Is it the 8th or is it the 9th today? What is it? It's the 8th. So I just pulled this up randomly and said, I'm going to pick today's numbered day, and I'm going to read what it has to say. And I find out I'm smack in the middle of meditations on sexual desire. Now, you always wonder how does a monk have meditations on sexual desire? Probably because he has sexual desire. I'm not going to talk about the Dalai Lama and what he thinks and about his sex life or things like that. If he has one, is he celibate? I think that's the idea. But he writes about it. And he says this on day 282. Now listen to this. Just daily advice. Let's see what he says. Sexual desire, which channels all our senses together, is particularly powerful and can radically alter the way we see things. In sexual passion, the man or the woman we desire appears perfect in every respect, unchanging and worthy of being loved forever. Every detail of their being has an extraordinary aura about it. We cannot imagine living without them, but unfortunately, as everything changes by nature, what we perceive as adorable today can suddenly lose its attraction as a result of a few words or a gesture, however trivial. Worse still, if we discover that this person who we had thought was perfect loves someone else, they can all of a sudden appear quite reprehensible. So that's his thoughts on day 282 about love. Sexual desire. Sexual desire, not love per se. And so I think it's very interesting. Have you ever noticed that if you're a spouse of somebody or you've got a significant other, have you ever noticed when it comes to sex that, and this just off the top of my head, folks, I just picked this up and looked at it and said, okay, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it. I'll read it. Sexual desire. Do you notice how quickly you can make that turn on a dime for someone? Do you know you could be 1 minute making googly eyes at each other and touching each other inappropriately for public spaces, and you could be wanting to do the do, as we used to say, and yet in that interim you could be, hey, let's go to a different room and make wild, passionate, sexy love. And you head up there, and something could happen along the way where there's a little disagreement or a dispute or something. And all of a sudden you can turn that sexual desire into something where you're yelling at each other and it goes away really quickly. So our emotions get really bound up in our sexual desire. Now, I haven't prepared anything to talk about this today, but there is a truism, is that sexual desire is transitory. It can come and go. But the person you love, if you love somebody, you love the person that you're having the sexual relations with. That's something, remember we talked about positional and experiential, how that falls along two linear lines. Say, the position I have with this person is I love them and that's not going to change, and I'm going to maintain that and nurture that. But the experience, which is a different line, could be a roller coaster all along the way, because we have our ups and our downs. So there you go. There it is. I don't know what to take away from that today, other than to know that sexual desire is something that you place on somebody because sometimes it's just pure, let's just say it, folks, it's pure out and out lust. You want somebody, you look at somebody, you go, hey, I don't care what all the other circumstances in our lives are. I want you now. I'm going to strip you naked and we're going to do our thing. That happens to people sometimes. And then there are people who say, I can't do that because I have a commitment and I'm committed over here. And that's the person I love. So we have all those things that go on, all those things that we experience. And we say, nowadays especially, that we can't judge anybody or we can't hold anybody to a certain standard because everybody operates under different standards of behavior. This is what we're told. And passion cannot be selected, we're told. And yet, is there something to that is a good thing if you withhold, if you hold that for the person that you say you love? Is there something good to that? It's like the same thing about smoking, all right? On a totally different level there. But smoking. I love to smoke. I love the act of smoking. Now, I've said before, and rather tongue-in-cheek at times, I'm not addicted to cigarettes. I'm addicted to smoking them. I enjoy the act of smoking a cigarette. And I've given it up before. I gave it up after my big heart surgery 3.5 years ago, and for about 6 months, and I picked it up again. And I've been a medium light smoker, and I stopped smoking again after the heart attack 3 weeks ago. It'll be 3 weeks tomorrow morning. And just because of all the complications smoking can create. And I don't smoke a whole lot. I didn't smoke a whole lot, but I haven't had anything for 3 weeks. And right now, there are times I crave it, and I go, man, I'd like to just have a cigarette. But you know why I don't? Because I know as soon as I start, I'll have another one later. And it's not addiction, it's that you get back into the habit of doing it. I enjoy it. There's things I enjoy. It's like saying, I will deny myself sex because I need to for some reason, whatever your reason might be. And then there's a time where you go, I think I'll do it this one time. And you do it that one time, you know what? It's like Lay's potato chips. Lay's appropriately named for the illustration. Nobody can eat just one. And so, same with sex, same with cigarettes, same with all of this. Once you give into that, or you break your resolve to do a certain thing a certain way or act a certain way, it's really easy to do that again. And so you keep your resolve up. You keep it's not a wall you build. You say, if I have, it's like with smoking, I've always said, if I need to wear a patch, or I need to have counseling or whatever it is to stop smoking, that's not me doing it. That's somebody else helping me along the way. Either I have the power to not be brought under anything, or I have no power at all. So I say the power is mine to make that choice to not smoke. Don't need any help to do it. I just do it. Same thing with sexual desires, sexual love, all of those things. There are things that are under our control, and we have the ability to make those things work for us or make them work against us. And sometimes we got stuff going on. We got emotions. We got emotional baggage that we carry with us. Sometimes our partner has emotional baggage. You know, when you meet somebody and you fall in love and you carry on life and you lead up to a point where you want to join those two lives together. You want to get married. You want to create a home. You want to have children. It's not always revealed in that period, some of the things that happen once you've had children, once you had living together, once you experience the emotions of each other. And so the sexual tryst turns into the sexual habit, turns into the sexual, sometimes as marriage goes on and stuff, the sexual drudgery, the sexual obligation. And when you start feeling that obligation, all of a sudden it changes your outlook on sexual relations together. And I'm no counselor on this stuff. I don't talk about this stuff. This is all, I'm shooting out of my ass today, folks, off the top of my head. But I'm going to tell you what, when you love somebody, sex goes along with that. And when there are times where that goes away, you have to look at why that's gone away and what's been brought to the table. What kills it for you? What makes it alive for you? What makes it something that you could do at the drop of a hat versus something that, I'm going to leave off of that for a while. We all have those things. And it's all tied into our emotions and our emotional makeup, which is what I wanted to talk about today. After doing a whole series talking, a mini series for the last 8 to 10 days on critical thinking, on controlling the way we think, controlling the way we perceive information, how we disseminate information, I thought it might be a good thing to look a little bit at the emotions of why we do what we do. And so I want to look into something I'm kind of calling, and I got a lot of information up here on this, so we'll just start rummaging through it, and we're going to see where we get. And I'm going to talk about the Tao of Emotions, the rethinking our obsession with coping, with expressing our emotions on a day-to-day basis. We spend a lot of time trying to cope with our problems, the things that might be, whether they're in the area of sexual desire, as we talked about from the Dalai Lama, and it led into all kinds of other babbling about that, whether it's the problems of being sequestered at home, the problems of work, the problems of relating, all of these things. We spend a lot of time trying to cope with our problems. And also the emotional baggage that comes along with our problems and the emotional baggage we create out of our problems. And it's no wonder life is full of challenges, seemingly one after the other, after the other, after the other, almost all the time. And most of our coping focuses on our emotions. It's the ebbs and the flows of our feelings, the frustrations, the worries, the sadness, the regrets, the panic that we have, the angers that we have, the things that drive us, the things that drive us into the ground, the things that cause our anxieties, the things that make us love and make us hate. We deal with those things all day long. If you run into somebody who says, I hate women, guys, I hate women, I'm never going to date again. I've seen women say, I hate men, men are all blah, blah, blah. You've seen all different other kinds of problems that rise up in there. It's all because of the experiences we have and the frustrations, worries, feelings, angers, happinesses, all those things that come out of our experiences. And this isn't always comfortable stuff. Sometimes this is really difficult stuff to have to cope with and deal with. And sometimes we think we've got it mastered while we're sitting all alone, late at night at home, the bare bulb hanging over our head, the TV on in the distance, in the background, pouring another glass of scotch or whatever your drink is, having another smoke, and you're all alone. And you're resenting or regretting, resenting where you are, fueling the way you feel. And it can often seem like we're always fighting those feelings back. Coping often becomes a struggle of trying to make those things go away. You ever notice that? The way we cope and our struggles and all our emotional things, they're all wrapped up in making those feelings be gone, or sitting in the swill, that swampy, festering swill of our emotions, and just letting it be what it is. We try to change our thinking. We try to be more positive. We try to cheer up. We try to focus our mind on other things. We try to stop worrying, stop feeding the anxieties. And unfortunately, many times we lose that battle. And so, even in my world, where I'm a family man, I've got a loving wife. I love my wife. I've got kids that I love, even though they frustrate the hell out of me some days. My wife is out of town for a few days. So I'm doing all the morning duties, which I normally do a lot of that anyway, but Rainey usually gets them up and dresses them because I'm up early. And I drive them to school, and I help get them out the door and then drive them to school. Today, most of them slept in the bed last night with me. They just crawled in. They wanted to be there, plus the dog. And get them all up, get them dressed, get them out the door. They eat breakfast at school, although I'd get up an hour early to do what I used to do, and that's cook breakfast all the time for the kids and have everybody sane when we walked out the door. But you've got all that stuff going on. So even in my world, the focus often seems to be how to reduce symptoms. And the expectations of everybody in this family and my friends around me, you guys sometimes, it's all me trying to say, how do I handle and use all my skills to make sure I make everybody around me happy, or create an atmosphere that creates happiness, or creates, like with this show and you guys, something that you can take away and is meaningful for you. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with me every minute, but something that's meaningful. So you add all of that stuff up together. We want the anxiety parts to go away. We want anxiety out. We want panic gone. We need sadness to lift and go away. And it's so uncomfortable. The desire is human, and it's completely understandable. And I want us to look at some new perspectives on this. And I got some things I want to offer you when we come back after this break, which we're going into now, on how to cope with your life, with all the things that you take on and you let control who you are. And if you're feeling down and out, how do you get out of that rut? How do you change that? What is happiness for you? Is happiness sitting alone having that scotch and cigarette all by yourself at 2:47 in the morning? Is happiness something else? How do you cope through all these things? So
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, thanks for sitting on through that break. Welcome back to the show. This is Scotty Roberts, segment 2 of tonight's Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, find all the places where you can hear this show in its audio format, and come over to the YouTube channel. Watch the video simulcast of this show and the live chat room going on right now over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And we're talking about our emotions, the feelings we have. In a sense, it's kind of this Tao of emotions. It's the rethinking and dealing with our obsession with how to cope with our feelings and the things that we have going on. We've all got bullshit going on. We've all got good stuff going on. And it all depends on what we focus on and how we bring ourselves to live a life that's happy. Does politics drive you under the ground? Does that make you unhappy because you get too invested in that? Makes you angry, raises your anxieties. Does your outlook on the world do that to you? Is it your relationships? Is it things much closer to home? Is it job? Is it income flow, revenue stream, paying the bills, having a partner? All of these things, these are all things that affect us. So here's a perspective, I think, on how to cope. Is it possible that we're paddling upstream? Because the more we struggle with our emotions, the more they seem to want to hang around. The more they seem to want to intensify and get stuck where they are. When we grapple with things, if we don't have solutions or ways to win that grappling, they stick around and we just struggle more and more and more. And in my view, the more people who try to cope by pushing their feelings away, the more they get stuck. And I see that understandable feeling of fear, once contracted and unmet, gets turned into anxiety for a lot of people. Sadness or grief, unexpressed, consolidates into depressions, sometimes permanent depression, sometimes temporal depression. These are patterns, and that over time, emotions that are not fully felt fully turn inward and get stuck. They get disordered. We have lives that are gray. We used to call it living in the gray zone. It's neither happy nor fully sad or depressed, but you're stuck in that middle. And you know what? This is why I have taken on that mantra for my life from Mark Twain's quote. 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So cast away from the safe harbor. Set your sails to the trade winds, explore, dream, discover. I've taken that on because I don't want to be a person that's stuck in the gray zone of life. Life is too short. When you add it all up, life's pretty short on the grand scheme of things. I look at myself and I say, I'm going to be 60 in 6 or 7 weeks. And I'm like, where did that 40 years go between my youth and now? It's fleeting. It goes fast. And Solomon said in the Old Testament. It's like the grass that withers. It springs up in the morning, then withers and fades in the heat of the day. So, but you don't have to see it this way. You don't have to live in that gray zone. You're not disordered, and there's nothing inherently wrong with you at the core. Nothing's really broken. Rather, perhaps you, like everyone else, has been trained to turn away from yourself in times of intense emotion. To fix, we learn that coping means strength, and we go about the business of controlling our emotions, fearing that if we don't get them under control, they're going to spiral out of control into a mental health disaster. That's the way we think about things. I've got to control these things. I've got to keep a lid on it. It's my emotions and I have to keep them inside, and I need my pain, kind of thing. But here's the truth of that. Your emotions, like everything else in the impressively designed body-mind that we have, are inherently in control. They are part of an intelligent system that has mechanisms for healing issues that arise. Do we have biological predispositions? Sure we do. We have tendencies and ingrained patterns from our life experiences? Sure we do. But one thing we can trust in is this. In the right space, emotions are self-correcting. And if you don't see them self-correcting, they might not be in the right place. I know this is hard to believe, and I've had a lot of people I've talked to over the years. When I was in ministry, I dealt with a lot of people that don't believe this, but it's true. When emotions are experienced and they're felt to their fullest, they move along toward healing. In fact, emotions are meant to flow out of us. And so if your emotions don't flow, something's clogged up, and it's not going to clear the pipes, so to speak. Now, I can hear you maybe asking out there, what about things like trauma or losing a loved one or receiving a life-threatening diagnosis, or by losing a loved one, it doesn't necessarily mean death. It can mean they've left you and you're bereft of that relationship. So these things, I'm not saying that these things aren't incredibly difficult things to cope with. And I'm also not saying that there are times when our emotion patterns aren't dysfunctional or have long, complicated histories and tons of baggage that move these patterns into the realm of significant mental health problems. But many life experiences and their companion emotions can feel soul-crushing for us. And the idea here is not that they don't hurt. It's that when you move into that emotion and experience, and you experience the hurt directly, it keeps flowing, it keeps moving. And it shows you that what it's doing to you and how you can move forward. And the emotions themselves, once felt, deliver you to the other side where you ride the wave. And thinking about your feelings and trying to influence them from the control tower that's your mind is often futile. Emotions are designed to be felt and experienced. And sometimes they ravage you in the process, but then you're left to breathe again on the other side. Emotions have a message for you. Lean in. It's the best way through those tough times. But then there are times where you have to ask yourself, how do I gain the positive control over my emotions then? Once I've gone through that and I felt that and I've let it have its way, where do I go from there? So there is a point where you have to let go of control, but then there's a point where you have to put control back on. How do you learn to control your emotions so your emotions don't control you? So letting emotions flow is different than letting them take over control. So what do you do with that? It seems contradictory, but it really does flow hand in hand. Have you ever said something out of anger that you later regretted? Do you let fear talk you out of taking risks that could really benefit you? If so, you're not alone. Emotions are powerful. Your mood determines how you interact with people, how much money you spend, how you deal with challenges, how you spend your time. All of those things, believe it or not, are not just cognitive decisions of rational, logical minds. Those are things that we do out of our emotion. So gaining control over your emotions will help you become mentally stronger. Fortunately, anyone who can become better at regulating their emotions, just like any other skill, managing your emotions requires patience and dedication. Anyone can learn how to regulate that flow. Sometimes you've got to let it go. You've got to let the emotions take control of you. But you can't live your life that way. So how do you conquer over allowing the emotions to stay in control of where you are? It's not saying that we aren't supposed to be emotional. It's saying, how do you keep those things from controlling who you are? So you have to experience uncomfortable emotions, but you can't stay stuck in them. I know so many people who are the way they are because they've had bad emotional experiences, and yet they remain stuck in those experiences. They don't move on from that. They don't let the flow take them out of it. So managing your emotions isn't the same as suppressing them. And I think there may be some of us, even listening to this show, what we do, we tend to not manage our emotions. We tend to allow ourselves to be the suppressors of our emotions. We push them down so they don't overcome us. And we think we're doing something good with that. We're ignoring the sadness, or we're pretending that we don't feel the pain in order to make those emotions go away. And then we talk about them later as these wonderful things that we've overcome. By the power of my will, I've suppressed it. And we don't experience it, and therefore we don't have any control over it at all. It's controlling us. In fact, unaddressed emotional wounds are those things that are likely to get worse over time. And there's a good chance that suppressing your feelings is going to cause you to turn to these all sorts of unhealthy coping mechanisms. Food, alcohol, things like that, controlled substances. And acknowledging your feelings while also recognizing that your emotions don't have control over you is what you need to be able to do. And if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you can take control of your mood and turn your day around. If you're angry, you can choose to calm yourself down. And so I want to go through a few things that are healthy ways to regulate your emotions. Because we all have them. We all have these things that we want to allow to overcome us. And there are times, where having a nice stiff drink is an okay thing. Having a nice stiff drink every day to cover up the emotions is suppressing it rather than letting it do its work. And do its work, that's something that comes to mind. There's something I want to read for you here. I was once, and I've talked about this before, there was a point in my life, and we're talking almost 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago, where I went through some really harsh emotional times, and it had to do with my children and problems with my relationship and things like that. And I remember one day I was so despondent, I just said, I'm going to try something I've never tried before. And I said, God, and I prayed, I'm going to flip open my Bible. I'm just going to stick my finger in, and if there's something that you have for me, show that to me. I don't usually throw the fleece out like that. I'm usually more logical about my approach to those things, but show me something. And I did that. I flipped this big old Bible I had open, and I stuck my hand in, and it hit James chapter 1. And it said this. It said, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your life and your faith produces perseverance. So let perseverance finish its work, so that you might be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it'll be given to you. But when you ask of God, you have to believe that God's going to give something to you. Don't doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that's blown and tossed by the wind. That person shouldn't expect to receive anything from God. For such a person is double-minded and unstable in all that they do." So, and then it goes on into some other principles that it teaches. And so when I looked at that, at the time, I found that the testing of my life and of my faith creates perseverance. And so I needed to find ways to regulate my emotions and to find ways to let emotion have their way, but to persevere through it. So number one, label your emotions. Before you can change how you feel, label the emotion you're experiencing. Do it right now. If you're experiencing something, do it now. Take a moment. Label it. Are you nervous about that? Are you disappointed by labeling it? Are you sad? If you have any of those things, can you label those things? Name them for what they are. And keep in mind that anger sometimes masks emotions. If you're angry about what has happened to you, many times that masks, that's the mask we put on, the charade we play to cover up the deep emotion. I remember when I was in counseling, in therapy a long time ago, post all this stuff that had happened in my marriage and with my kids and all of that. And I would give answers to questions to a therapist, and they'd say, "Yeah, that's great, but how do you really feel?" And I said, "I don't know what you mean." And she had to work through breaking through that upper crust, that mask that I had put on to cover up the way I felt about something. Masking the emotions. We can do that with anger. We mask the emotions that make us feel vulnerable. And it's like shame or embarrassment. So we pay close attention to what's really going on inside of us, not by experiencing it, by masking it. And put a name to your emotions. Like I used to say, put a toe tag on it. Identify it for what it is. Keep in mind that you might feel a whole lot of emotions all at one time. All at one time, like anxiety, frustration, impatience, all of those things. Label how you feel, and by doing that, you can take a lot of the sting out of the emotion. It can also help you take careful note of how those feelings are likely to affect your decisions. And you know, when we have feelings and we mask them, we play the game, we put on the mask that nobody ever sees. There's an old song that said, "She's one of the walking wounded." But, one of the walking wounded. But her feelings never show. Outside the wall around her heart where none's allowed to go. It's been this way for so long now that she can't remember when she could still hope for tomorrow. So instead, she just pretends. And this is the way a lot of people go through life. So, how do you escape that? Number two, you have to reframe your thoughts. Your emotions affect the way that you perceive the events around you. If you're feeling anxious, If you get an email from the boss that says they want to see you right away, you might assume you're going to get fired. You feel the worst. I know people who have anxiety. My own wife, Rainey, has anxiety issues. And those issues make her think certain things about everything can be a negative if she's not careful. And if you're going to feel happy, if you were feeling happy, when you got that same email, you might first have thought that you're going to be promoted or congratulated on a job well done. But when we let our bad emotions overtake us, they run our lives with anxiety. Consider the emotional filter you're looking at the world through. Then reframe your thoughts to develop a more realistic view. This is a cognitive act that we can do. We can say my emotions have overcome me and I view everything through this filter. What if you remove that filter? If you can't catch yourself thinking, this party is going to be so boring, remind yourself, it's up to me to have fun. I can talk to people about interesting subjects and make the best of my time. So, it's like last night, my little girl, I was feeling tired last night, early in the evening, and my little girl wanted to play a game, my 5-year-old. Let's play a game, a card game, Dad. And I'm like, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is play a card game. But it was a game that was in a box and was all these different pieces and you had to put it together and it's meant for kids. But I said, sweetie, this is so complicated. Daddy can't even think through setting this up right now. And so I wanted to escape that thing. I wanted to get out of it. And I thought, if I turn away her need to play this and want to spend that time with me, then I'm setting that in motion in her mind. Dad always walked away from doing things, and I don't want her to get that feeling. So we found a different way to play the game, and I muscled my way through it, and we had a good time. And so by reframing the way we view something is a cognitive act. Sometimes we've got to struggle our way through it. Sometimes we've got to play that card game with the 5-year-old who kind of makes up the rules as she goes along at the same time. And so the easiest way to gain a different perspective is to step back and ask yourself, what would I say to somebody else who had this problem? Answering that question is going to take some of the emotion out of the equation so you can think more rationally. If you find yourself dwelling on a negative thing or the negative aspect of something, you may need to change the channel in your brain. Now, it's not that thinking about negative things isn't sometimes something that we do. Having to go through that sometimes is the way we come out the other end. But we never think about negative things in order to keep those things around. We think about them and we deal with them. We cope with them. We manage them so we don't stay in them, so we can come out of them. So a quick physical activity is like going for a walk or cleaning off your desk can help you stop ruminating. And I hate to say that it's that cliche, but sometimes getting fresh air gives you a fresh perspective. So number 3, engage in a mood booster. When you're in a bad mood, you're likely to engage in activities that keep you in a state of mind, that you isolate yourself. You're mindlessly scrolling through your phone, or you're complaining to people around you, are just a few of those typical go-to-bad mood behaviors, types of things that we might all indulge in. But those things are going to keep you stuck. We have to take positive action if we want to feel better. If we want to get, and sometimes it's not wanting to feel better. Sometimes we don't want to feel any better at all. But the need to feel better is what we have to address. So you have to think of things that you do when you feel happy. I hate to put it that way, but, what's the old Disney Peter Pan? Think of a wonderful thing, any happy little thing. Think of raindrops, think of snow, think of reindeer, off you go, and blah, blah, blah. You know the song. I don't. Just happen to remember that. You think of your happy place, the things that put you there. What are the things that you do that make you feel good about life, in other words? I don't want to get sing-songy and cliche. It's like, go find your happy place. I'm not saying that. I'm saying find the things that make you go, the things that motivate you, that keep you happy. Do those things when you're in a bad mood and you'll start to feel better. And, I had said, and I brought this example up once before, when I used to run a men's group in my church, lay ministry, and talking to guys in troubled marriages, of all things. And this was a long time ago, 25 years ago. And I remember one guy who said, I just don't love my wife anymore. I'm out of love with my wife. And I can't fix this. And I said, before you take any drastic action, why don't you do this one thing? And I slid a legal pad, yellow paper, across the table to him, and a pen. And I said, write down right now with me. Let's go through it. Name 20 things you would do if you did love your wife. If you had a wife whom you loved, if you were in love with somebody. Okay, and he wrote down these 20 things. And I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Take this piece of paper and go home. And spend a month doing them. Then come back and tell me where your relationship is. Do these things for the wife you say you don't love. And you know what? He didn't come back in 30 days, but, we always brushed shoulders, and he said, and their relationship was phenomenal because he made it work. He did the things that made it work positively, and he worked himself through the negativity, and the relationship became better because of it. So when you do the things that make you feel good about something, that is where you will end up. Those are the things that will dictate where you come out. That's the point with that. Here's a few examples of these mood boosters. Let's say you're in a bad mood. Call a friend. Talk about something uplifting, pleasant. Don't call somebody to continue your complaining. Don't say, hey, let's go out to coffee, let's get together, and then go out and complain about the things that are giving you the bad mood. Find ways to get yourself out of the bad mood. And you can do that. You don't have to let that emotion dictate who you are. Go for a walk. Sometimes just going for the walk, getting the endorphins rolling. I found that works for me. Meditate for a few minutes. Just blow it all out. Meditate. Listen to uplifting music. Do those kinds of things. Those are the things that are going to help you get out of the funk, so to speak, and not let the bad emotion regulate you. So you have to then keep practicing regulating your emotional skills. Manage your emotions. Managing them is rough at times. It's hard to find our way through the murk at times. And there's always likely going to be a specific emotion like anger that sometimes gets the best of you. But the more time and attention you spend on regulating your emotions, the mentally stronger you're going to become. You're going to gain confidence in your ability to handle discomfort while also knowing that you can make these healthy choices that shift your mood. Now, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but I don't apologize when it comes to saying maybe some of these things sound a little cliche. But this is the way we get through. And I said once a long time ago, there's this song. I heard this says, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I'm no longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God. Now you can plug any deity in there that you want to. Anything that you want to put in there that is your go-to spirituality. But I'm not a child of fear. I'm not a slave to it, because I have the ability to overcome those things that will run me over. So think about that, folks. We got to go. We're out of time. Have a good night. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in 23 hours. Sit tight.